Good morning. Happy election eve, everyone. It's so great to be with you again. Welcome to another episode of Teamwork, A Better Way. I'm joined by my amazing, honorable, illustrious, celebrated, and accredited professional speaking co-host and master of all things teamwork, Spencer Horn. Did I put in enough
Yes,
adjectives in there,
you
Spencer,
missed
for
something actually. Blushing,
Well,
Christian. You're too kind. I'm so happy to be with you. We were just with each other Friday, and I'm so glad we're back.
yeah, we're back on. Like I said, it's election eve, and temperatures are running high here in the United States of America and also around the world. I mean, I hear from colleagues globally who have their eyes trained on what's going to happen here tomorrow in the United States, and in this challenging time for all of us, I thought it would be great to have a conversation with you, but also one of the most amazing, talented, genuine people that I know, Jason Hewlett, who is coming back to the show for this special episode. Now, listeners and viewers who have seen it before, you may know him, but for those of you who don't know Jason, why don't you spend the next 45 minutes reading his biography?
That's exactly what it would take if I read it all. Thank you, Christian, for giving me that opportunity. So, Jason Hewlett has delivered thousands of presentations over 2 decades, and he is one of the world's only keynote speakers utilizing entertainment, musical impressions, and comedy to teach leaders how to capture their unique leadership and promise and signature moves. I have seen him in multiple roles as an entertainer, most recently just thrilling sold out audiences, and as an incredible keynote speaker. I've had that opportunity to see him in those multiple roles, and he marries those things so well together. And he has performed in every major casino in Las Vegas, no small feat, and is one of the youngest inductees ever into the prestigious Speaker Hall of Fame. He's the author of the acclaimed book, The Promise to the One, which you must read if you have not read it. Fabulous book. Husband, father, writer, mentor, hiker, yes, coach. Jason's blog, The Promise, is enjoyed weekly by people worldwide. You and I read that, Christian, and his online videos and courses inspire learning and entertainment. He's had posts that have had millions of views and responses because not only is he incredibly smart and entertaining, he's funny, and he's able to bring in humor to bridge the gap and just between so many different people, while educating, and he uplifts corporate executives and other artists and leaders and their families. Everything he does is family oriented. Anybody can watch it. He's been invited to be part of a Middle East tour in support of the U.S. military in places like Kuwait, Afghanistan, Africa. And he, because of his successful authorship of The Promise to the One, has received the national, oh my good, hold on. That's a different thing. I'm sorry. I'm getting so confused with all your accolades, Jason. He's also received the National Outstanding Eagle Scout Award from the Boy Scouts of America. And only 800 men in the history of the Boy Scouts have ever received that. Christian, did you know that?
I had no idea either that Jason had received it or that there were so few young men awarded that prestigious designation.
Yeah, neither did I. And he's also received the prestigious Star Award from the Sarah Center for Arts. And he has so many hobbies, like I said, hiking, which, Jason, one of these days we're going to have to share some trails. He loves getting up in the mountains like I do, writing music, playing with kids, and staring at his wife. That's one of his hobbies. His greatest accomplishments all live within the walls of his home. Amen. He is a husband to the most beautiful woman in the world, Tammy, and dad to 4 incredible young children who serve as his inspiration and help deliver material for his presentations. And I get to see a lot of his writing and posts about his kids. Just so fun. As a family, the Hewletts donate over 20 hours per month in community service, volunteering, mentoring, outreach, and philanthropy to worthy causes in their home state of Utah. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, guys. That intro is crazy. Thanks a
Yeah.
lot.
So we're not worthy intro.
That's right.
Wow. What are
I'm
you
sick of
doing
me
hanging out with
already.
us schlubs?
No, thank you guys for having me. What a pleasure to be here with two of my favorite people, intellectuals, and equally some of the best speakers I've heard. So I'm really excited we get to have this conversation.
Well, we are honored to have you here, Jason. And really, the impetus for this, as Spencer mentioned, uh, you are active on LinkedIn. You have this weekly blog that you run on there. It also gets sent out the email to tens of thousands of people. But recently, uh, one of your clients became controversial, and that caused a lot of consternation and even some strained and broken relationships, which I was just heartbroken to read. And so, I wanted to talk to you about that experience that you had recently, and try to unpack that so that uh, we can look at how we can come together instead of dividing. It's such a polarized environment now, and people are really stressed out about upcoming elections and all things political here in the United States. And so I was hoping if you could just, kind of talk about the experience that you've had recently this year, uh, and some of both the blessings and the fallout that's come from your recent experiences this year, and what that can help teach us. There's a lot packed in that question. I'm sorry, but maybe just kind of give us a rundown of what you have personally experienced this year as you've gone out on the road and entertained thousands of people.
Yeah, that's a loaded question for sure. I'll do my best. The truth is, for the last 25 years, I've made a living as a corporate speaker, entertainer, and MC. And I have been able to bridge the gap, if you will, between the left and the right. I mean, I've just been a down the middle kind of guy that anybody could hire and anybody could trust to show up and obviously not say anything controversial. I'm a G-rated Las Vegas quality entertainer. That's a very small niche. And so I've been very fortunate to make a living doing that. And my clients trust that I will show up and do things that everybody can relate to and that will be non offensive in any way. And I've made a great career that way. And it was only in the last couple of months that I had an opportunity that could not be passed up. In fact, I'm not only a speaker and performer and do these things for my living for over 2 decades, but I'm also the president of a company, a health supplement company called Cardio Miracle. And Cardio Miracle helps with your cardiovascular and other types of health situations if you've had surgery and so forth. And this company, as I'm the president of it, and my father is the founder and formulator of the product, it's not an MLM or a direct sales company. It's just direct to consumer. And we sponsored an event that came to our hometown of Salt Lake City, Utah. And part of my dad's mission and Cardio Miracle is to say, can we make America healthy again through natural products and to help people take back their health? And a group came through Salt Lake City that my dad has been following for, he was very excited because the guy that came to Salt Lake is named Tucker Carlson. And all I knew about Tucker Carlson, I'm embarrassed to say, and this was in September. Today is November 4th that we're doing this. September, I only knew Tucker Carlson was the guy with the bow tie and was always loud on, I think, Fox or CNN. I didn't know which one. This is how far out of the political realm I've been. I've just been so busy doing my gigs, raising a family, writing books, inspiring people through joy, and doing my best to perform and being friends with everybody, and want to continue, of course. But we sponsored this one event in Salt Lake City where Tucker Carlson sold pretty much out an arena called the Delta Center, where the Utah Jazz play. And his guest was a guy named Glenn Beck. I'd heard of Glenn Beck. I'd never listened to Glenn, but I admire Glenn Beck's stances on things and how he, fights for the Constitution and so forth. And so I was able to open the show for them after much convincing and sponsoring the event from my father's side. The tour didn't know who I was. I'm not famous. I've been in the private sector for so long that nobody was sure that I would be good at this. And so I only had a a little bit over 10 minutes, and I went on stage to essentially threats saying, if you're not able to get off stage in time, we're going to have some consequences. And equally, they weren't excited to have me. But as you guys both pointed out through my bio and so forth, I've been doing this for a quarter of a century. The show went so well, and I do music, I do comedy, I do some impressions. They're all like if Weird Al and Jim Carrey and Billy Joel all got together and made an act. I mean, that's what it is. And so I did my music and comedy, and I closed with God Bless USA. Had everyone raise up their phone lights and move them back and forth. It was a glorious thing. When I came off stage, the tour folks said, "That was the best thing we've ever seen. Why have we never heard of you?" And they asked me to continue on the tour, as this was one of the first stops of Tucker's tour. I had luckily cleared out all of September to write a book, so I only had one gig in the way. Next thing I knew, I was on tour with Tucker Carlson. I didn't realize how polarizing of an opportunity this was, nor of a decision that this would then not only frustrate, but also extremely divisively have friends coming at me in both a private and a public way that was astonishing. And then also those that have I would have never known were as conservative as Tucker is and Glenn Beck, that they were all coming out of silence or hiding to say something as essentially, "We support this, we're excited for you, we're proud of you." And so it came both ways. It was very interesting. And me having not done any homework, and I'm embarrassed to say that I'm that guy, um, I I was I was torn absolutely, because as soon as I announced that I was doing this on my blog, we had plenty of holds on the calendar for events upcoming. But as soon as I announced it, those holds went away. The clients said, "We're not having him now, and we have an issue with what he's doing." And I started to get a lot of negative feedback real fast. And so essentially, they were assuming that I was aligning with this movement or whatever, you call Tucker Carlson's efforts. He had a different guest in every city, people that I had never heard of before. People like Charlie Kirk, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump Jr. I've heard of Donald Trump Jr., but people that apparently are a bit controversial and are extremely conservative and lean into the Republican Party. For most of my adulthood, I've been in the libertarian side and saying I'm going to, vote on the issues or vote for the person, those types of things, depending on who it was. I was never a straight ballot guy. And so as I started to do homework while I was on tour, I signed up for everything I could regarding Kamala Harris, regarding Donald Trump, on their Instagram, and finding out through the media myself. I found some interesting things. Actually, I was getting standing ovations at every gig. And I went from being limited to 10 minutes as the opener to eventually getting between 20 and 30 minutes every show, to the point that this last weekend I was able to perform with the Donald Trump event with Tucker in Phoenix, and they gave me 45 minutes. Now, I find that fascinating because it was standing ovations, people crying with laughter, loving it every minute, arenas full of people. And the media came after me as well. In Rolling Stone, the first time I've ever been written about in Rolling Stone, I was shredded, like that he's no good.
So people are laughing, they're having a great time, and you're giving this completely focused political message as part of your entertainment, right?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
My whole thing was about let's be one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm just like, hey, if you're a Democrat, I'm gonna make you laugh. If you're a Republican, I'll make you laugh. If you're anywhere in between, I'll make you laugh. And I'll tell you, it was really frustrating to get written up by Rolling Stone as being called. He received a tepid response, or the Washington Post, I think, said I'm a sweaty comedian, and
Okay, Chris,
just
Jason, sorry, I've got to just cut in here for a second. If you have never experienced this in my positions in being an executive, I have seen how often the media does not tell the truth. I mean, and personally, I've experienced that, and it is absolutely crazy. Reading a news article about something I quoted, and it was completely wrong. It's just, it happens more often. And we even just saw that with Elon Musk's mother coming out and say, "Hey, you know, I've been, you know, voting one way my whole life, and as soon as I started hearing media talking about my son, I knew something was wrong." I don't know if you've seen that, but yeah, I read that article in the Rolling Stone. Keep going.
Yeah, my whole life I wanted to be in Rolling Stone. I mean, I subscribed to that forever until a few years back when they started to make some big changes. But I remember reading that and thinking, man, I got the opposite response to what they just wrote. And the more I leaned into reading about the media, the more I thought, well, where am I getting my media? What am I listening to? What am I reading? And here I'm having this experience that's a game changer, life changer, and I'm losing friends left and right because of it. I thought, well, how could this be so divisive? I didn't realize that going around and having an opportunity and living the American dream, which it felt like I was actually finally getting to a level that the world would get to know what I do and who I am, and that was really devastating, to be candid. And so I started signing up for anything and everything I could, other types of networks, including the Tucker Carlson network, which I didn't even know existed until I was on the tour. And it's because he's sharing his own thoughts, and I believe that that's where we're going. That's what you guys are doing right now. We're independent media, right? And I think that that's an important thing, that we can share what's true, and hopefully we aren't censored in some way. And so the more I was on this tour, the more I realized that in certain ways we are being censored, in other ways the truth is not being told. And I started leaning way into it. I guess you could say that I did. I took the pill, or whatever they say. The what drank the red pill. Is that the Matrix? I guess.
It's the red
Uh,
pill. That's right. Yeah, the
the
blue
red
pill keeps you where you are.
Okay. So yeah, and I've never seen that movie either. So I mean, guys, I'm way out of like pop culture jargon. I'm out of a lot of things in order to just do my best to go around spreading joy the way that I do, which is family friendly, and has always been a patriotic thing in terms of like I love America. I've served for the troops, made them laugh overseas during war, as was read in my bio, and done everything I could to bring people together. And I didn't realize that by being a part of a tour like this, that it would appear that I'm being divisive in some way. And that was really disappointing to find out that people felt that about it. So yeah, I've lost friends, lost followers, unsubscribes to the blog. People sent me some pretty nasty texts, emails, Facebook messages, you name it. Others that have been extremely supportive. That's been really amazing to find that I am losing friends and then gaining new ones. That's interesting. I feel that it's sad that if the only reason people are coming on is because of what it looks like I'm appearing politically, but I appreciate that we can all hopefully get along. And I can also say that it's been quite the journey. I've never experienced anything close to it, and I've gone viral a couple of times in a different ways. And I've gotten a lot of hate in the past with certain comedy routines I've done that people just didn't think were great, and that's okay to get hate on YouTube comments. I'm all for free speech, and it hurts a little bit when you read those comments. But lately, as I've read the comments, it's been such a divisive thing. So that's why I'm glad we can talk about this. And Christian, that was a loaded question. I don't know if I even came close, but I hope we got closer to what you wanted me to say.
Wow. I forgot that when Spencer hears something really impactful, he punctuates it with a sounder, and boom, he cut me right off, Spencer.
Sorry,
Well
I
done.
tried to do it fast.
So, no, I really appreciate you going into depth and providing some context there, because oftentimes we just see little outlines of things, or we read one small sentence and you don't really understand the context behind all of it. And so I appreciate you taking the time to walk us through the process that you've gone through, and what you have encountered. One thing I'm curious about um, is do you feel like the support and or the retribution, for lack of a better word, really broke down party lines? Or did you see people from across the aisle actually reaching out and saying, "Hey, I'm not from your part, or I'm not from Tucker's party. I'm not aligned with him, but I support what you're doing anyway." You know.
Cool question. Yeah. I mean, candidly, at the very beginning, no. People were saying, "What are you doing? You're throwing your career away. You've built up this thing that can go left and right and everywhere in between. What are you doing?" It wasn't until I started writing the blog to say, "Look, folks, I am not necessarily attaching or aligning to this. I am here to spread joy to anybody willing to listen. I am here to make a difference in the world the only way that I can." And that's when I finally started to get, yes, those people that reached out from all sides and said, "Hey, absolutely don't support the person you're on stage with, but I'm so excited for your career or for the opportunity or that new people get to see you." You know, there are people that have loved what I do for many, many years and supported it and have always said, "Why aren't you more famous?" or "Why haven't you been on a world stage?" This essentially became that for this brief moment. I don't know if it will continue. And that's just how these things go. Fame is fleeting, as we know. So we can't expect anything to come out of this outside of, I hope that this just helps others to see that we can, eventually reach out and be all one and united and love one another despite the way that we believe. I mean, I've been interacting my whole career with people of different faith, different ideals, different backgrounds. Never had a problem, right? And it actually, because of the amount of support I got on one side and the amount of vitriol from another, it did make me say to myself, "Gosh, I guess I do need to kind of choose and make a stance here and take a side." And that's a bummer of a thing to have to do publicly because then you're excoriated, which I then was. And that just happened, especially in the last week.
Well, hopefully our listeners know what excoriated means. I know Christian does, but this is so important. You talked about, and that's really what the focus of what we wanted to talk about today is what you started going into here just a minute ago. There's a danger when we just start listening to one side or the other. We don't get the whole story. We start creating these echo chambers of, where people say I can't watch this news station or I can't watch that news station because they're saying things that you don't agree with. Think about businesses. If they were to run their business, Christian and Jason, where they only listen to one group of advisors and not another, how would that impact their decisions? And if we only made decisions based on headlines or TikTok, information, we need more information, and I have to be careful about that. Sometimes we have too much information. I think we need to do our homework. If anything, what I've heard you say is, I'm kind of blissfully going along in my life and yet being friends with everybody. And I feel the same way. Jason, I'm in a similar business as you, and at a micro level, but I don't bring religion or politics. Every once in a while I bring something that is important to me in my faith, because it's a principle that I think is true no matter where you present it, and I'll be passionate, and I've gotten some frustration every once in a while, but I try to bring what they need and try to be friends with everybody. And Christian, do you and I agree on everything?
No, we don't agree on everything. In fact, we are on opposite sides of this political divide, right?
Absolutely.
But one of the things, you probably wanted to ask a question, so I apologize if I'm
No, cut
stepping
right in,
on
Christian.
you.
I do it to you all the
But,
time.
but one of the things that I thought was important that you pointed out, Jason, was, hey, there's a difference. You know, we get hired by people to do work, and the people who hire us. We may not have the same values as those people or those corporations that we work for. Uh, Myself, I mean, I work in Olympic environments. I've had to work, not had to, I've had the opportunity to work in places like Turkey, in the Middle East, in Doha, who have policies that many would consider here to be quite counter to liberal, small L democracy, right? But we stage events in these areas, and I go into these, and I report to the governments and the ministers about how things are going, and so on and so forth. And so, I think it's unwise to make judgments of people who, based on who their employer is, right? You mentioned working in casinos in Vegas, right? Well, the predominant religion here locally is opposed to gambling, right? But you've got two very prominent members of that faith, Donnie and Marie, who had a long-running show in Las Vegas, and nobody really criticized them for abandoning their faith or doing things that ran counter to their core beliefs. And so, not to get too religious on it, but that's, when Christ was shown a coin with Caesar's head on it, he said, "Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's," right? And so I think it's an important distinction to make there, because all of us have these kinds of experiences in our professional careers where we are working for individuals or organizations that don't completely align with our core beliefs.
So how do we start to create that unity? I mean, that's where I was going before. We're working for people that believe different than us, or we have people that are only listening to one side. How do we bridge that gap and prevent echo chambers? How do we start to reach out and create an environment where we can have greater peace, where we can have greater unity as a nation and as a business?
You guys, this is so far out of any topic that I've ever gotten to talk about, and so I'm not sure that I can articulate this well, but I can say this much. I read CNN and I read Fox, and I have subscribed to Tucker Carlson's network and the Blaze TV and the Daily Wire, and now I've signed up for Kamala Harris's Instagram, and now I'm trying to figure out what am I watching and reading. MSNBC. I'm just trying to decipher through everything for myself, because I've said it this way before. I make a living as a speaker, but I make a life as a listener. And I believe that when we want to find unity, it does come down to how much information can we get, and equally, can we be respectful in what we disagree about, and can we still work together even with the differences? I believe that everyone has signature moves that make them unique. I've been talking about that forever. I believe we all have a promise we need to share, and it's our promise. My promise doesn't need to be your promise, and I don't need to worry about what your promise is either. You should have it for you, and you should share it with the world. If your promise is opposite of mine, I applaud you for keeping your promise. Now, there's obviously, that goes to a weird place when people make promises in their religions to go and commit some kind of atrocious act. That's the kind of thing where you can say, gosh, that's really bad, that's wrong. I can say for myself that at this point, in this time, in this country, in this place, I feel that the promises I've made for myself and the people that are making promises for themselves, I respect them regardless of where they're at. And so I hope that, I mean, guys, I don't even know how to respond to this kind of stuff outside of saying, I do get to run a couple businesses. I am the president of multiple organizations. People think different. People believe different. People are born in the same family and leave the religion they were raised in and still have parents that expect those kids to respect that. It comes down to listening respectfully and having open discussion that oftentimes leads essentially nowhere other than into a circle of just making sure that we can respectfully disagree. And I think that that's the best way that I can articulate that. I don't know if that has given you the right answer that you need. What are you guys' thoughts?
that's one of the things we absolutely talked about is we need to do more listening. And Jason, I loved what you just said, and I think this is a great example to all of us. Instead of doubling down on separation, you're like, okay, what can I do to reach across to someone that thinks differently than I do? And I think an important aspect of leadership, we talk so much about diversity right now, and it is important that there is a diversity of thoughts, of ideas, of beliefs, and you just highlighted that, and that can bring strength to an organization. It can also bring dysfunction and chaos if we don't manage that well, and encourage all voices to be heard. I think there's a great danger if we stop listening and we stop hearing each other, and certainly with dignity and respect. That's what leaders do, and I think that is one of the best places to start.
All right. Well, I totally agree. One other thing that I think is important here is that we do it without judgment. So again, I'm approaching this from a religious perspective because it's a perspective that I know. So I don't apologize for it, but I hope that everybody will understand it in context. Spencer and I, we've talked about this before, right? The Christ in the New Testament teaches, "Judge not, that you be not judged." And then he gives an example. If your brother has a mote or a very small particle of something in his eye or her eye, don't try to remove it because you've got a beam in your own eye, something very large that is obstructing your vision. And why is this advice given? This advice is given because oftentimes with good intention, I see this in families, I've seen it in my own family. People try to persuade or convince another person to do something. So they use arguments and rhetoric with good intent and inadvertently cause terrible damage, right? If you had a surgeon who couldn't see, who was going to operate and remove this small speck of something from your eye, and he couldn't see himself or herself, you'd say, get another surgeon here, even if the surgeon's intentions are good, right? And I think a lot of the division we have today actually comes from a place of love, a genuine love, care, and concern for other people who believe differently. And we think to ourselves, if I could just say the right words to convince this person of the error of their ways, then they'll be redeemed. And,
Because I love you so much, Christian, I've
we'll
got to
all live
correct you.
happily ever after. And what happens is we have the opposite effect. Our good intentions are very clumsily applied, and we end up damaging or destroying relationships. And I'm curious, you mentioned here, Jason, hey, you're not the expert on this, but you are the expert of your own life experience. You know your own life experience more than any other person does. And so when it comes to your own personal experience, have you seen this, whether it's in your family or in neighborhoods and communities or professional relationships where someone is actually well-meaning, but they end up causing a lot more damage than they are trying to heal?
Yeah, great way of saying it. I received multiple messages over the weekend because it was on Thursday, Halloween, that I promoted that I was at the Trump event. And like I said, I had done all the Tucker Carlson events through September, or a majority of them, with many different guests, whether it was Kid Rock, Roseanne Barr, Russell Brand, famous, comedy or rock star celebrities, to political people like Jesse Kelly and Glenn Beck and so forth. Uh, I received multiple messages because at this Trump event, obviously I posted about it, and then I also did recommend, hey, this is who I'm voting for now. I'm out. I'm telling you, and I can't hold it back. And that was something that people were floored by, that are some of my dear friends. And so I received some really interesting messages, including, and people come under the banner of their religious beliefs at this thought, and they said things such as, in a private comment or Facebook message or email, they said things like, you've been speaking about the promise and you're a good family man with great values and character. And here you're essentially endorsing or attaching your name to something that absolutely discredits your messaging. And I am so disappointed in you. In other words, they're suggesting that because I have decided to share what I'm going to believe and what I'm going to support at this time, that all of a sudden everything I've written or said or the power and the meaning of my messaging is now void. I find that tragic to think that, that's somebody that knows my life or has watched me or followed me for 25 years, let's say, and then all of a sudden, because of one decision, would say that's over. Now, that's usually what happens when somebody has this stellar reputation, and all of a sudden a scandal breaks, and then all of a sudden they're chastised by the world and canceled. I get that, and that's tragic. I've spoken at those prisons where I've seen men that look like a normal good man, and they just maybe did one bad thing that everybody knew about. I mean, if all the bad things that everybody knew that all of us do, we'd probably really not be able to function very well in this society. And so I found that really interesting to have people say they're disappointed, or they're unfollowing me, or they're no longer believe anything I say. Those types of things are shocking to receive. And my best response was just to simply say, I have not changed. I've just been a little bit more informed, and I'm making some decisions that I guess I need to say outright. A lot of people are scared to say anything, and that's because they're going to be chastised, or they're going to be dismissed. And it's too bad, because we live in a democracy that should allow for us to have that kind of free speech and not be judged too harshly. And so I appreciate what you're saying about the judgment piece. When it comes to working with people that are different than us, the people I get to work with, they don't share the same beliefs as me. In fact, I belong to a religion that is extremely polarizing in terms of the people that we want to be accepted by people across the board. And there are a lot of people that, I believe in Christ, but there are people that believe in Christ as well that think that I believe in a different Christ. Now that's a tricky one. And so, what do you have to do to get through that conversation? You have to listen. You have to not have judgment. You have to do your research. You have to equally, I believe that you need to have the Spirit in your life. And all of these things add up to making it so that we aren't so much in the echo chamber. And I've been grateful to be able to bridge that gap for many years, and I hope to in the years to come.
Well, you are doing that, and I'm going to out Christian here just a little bit because of his. If you don't know his brilliance already, you certainly will the more you listen to him. But we were having a conversation, one of our many at lunch, and Christian, you said something that I have been thinking about a lot, and that since we're getting a little religious here, he says, build up treasures in heaven, not here on earth, right? And what did you say, Christian, that you believe that those treasures are?
I believe those treasures are relationships, right? And so with that commandment, we don't. You see it all the time. You go to serve in an assisted living facility where people are at their final days. They don't have material possessions anymore. They have a few photographs in their room, right? And what matters most to them are their children and grandchildren coming to see them, or close friends. And that famous landmark Harvard study that studied happiness, which is still ongoing. It started back in the 1930s. And really, the number one learning from that is that the most important determining factor of happiness are long lasting relationships, right? So when we're commanded in the Christian world to not lay up treasures on earth, but to lay up for yourselves treasures on heaven, what are those treasures? And my view is they are our relationships, and relationships are the currency of heaven. And so we should do all we can to foster meaningful relationships, and as many as we possibly can here, because we will carry those relationships with us there. And uh, because in our faith, we also believe that there's opposition in all things and there's an adversary at work as well. His work is to destroy those relationships.
And to divide.
And he uses tools like this to destroy those relationships. And unfortunately, it's a very effective tool. You know,
And one
but
of the
I submit.
reasons,
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, I just submit that in the end, um, our overriding focus should be on building and fostering relationships of love and trust and mutual understanding with each other, because at the end of the day, that's all we're going to have.
Guys, and that is what's been so tough about this for me. Honestly, the relationship piece, to think that I have worked so hard for so long to share extreme love and acceptance to people that absolutely I already knew what they believed. And I love them
anyway,
because of it.
yeah.
Yeah. They are absolutely the opposite me of everything that I do and have in my life. And I love them. Like, I adore them. And now I know that they think that I must think differently or something. And this is why it's tragic for me. Like, it breaks my heart to think that because I have, been a part of this experience and said a few things like, hey, I'm proud to be an American, or I wear an American flag, that discounts any other type of flag waved. That is not the truth in my world, in my life. I love those people all the more. And I'm extremely heartbroken that those treasures in heaven, which are the relationships on earth right now, have been compromised in some way. That to me is the most devastating casualty of the success that I've had in the last few months.
We have a comment. I'm sorry, I've been wanting to put it up here, but the discussion's been nice. But we hear from Kevin saying, discourse is an investment of respect to others, values and an investment of respect in yourself. Politicians will speak with two tongues and ambiguous messages in the hopes of being held in the hopes of being held accountable. Listening is respect, nothing more. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. Any thoughts on that, you two?
I love that comment. That's killer. I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about. And I mean, that's where, for me, it's a matter of not just saying, "Hey, this is what I believe, and you have to believe it too." That's what's kind of driving me bonkers about what I'm experiencing from folks, is to say, "If you don't believe like me, then we can't be friends. We can't have any association. I'm unfollowing you. I'm disinterested in you." And I'm thinking, "Holy smokes! I didn't know that's what this was."
Yeah, well, so let's, if we can, let's transition a little bit. One of the things that I was going to say earlier is one of the reasons why this division, one reason why it's happening is a little bit how humans are built or created, and we tend to focus on the negative much easier than we do on the positive. If there's a chance of a negative story being true, that's listened to and given greater weight in our mind than something that is positive and uplifting. It's really quite scary. That's why news cycles focus specifically on negativity, because the headlines sell. People are click it more often on social media than positive uplifting stories. We talked about that on Friday. So we have this bias towards negativity, and the messages that frankly both parties often put out there is the world's going to end if you vote for the enemy. The world's going to end if you vote for that person. And that is part of the thing that is causing so much anxiety and consternation. So how do we start to bridge that gap? We've talked about a couple ways: having respectful conversations, listening. You, Jason, as a performer, are incredibly funny. You incorporate humor so much in everything that you do. This has been a serious conversation, and yet, even sometimes with your humor, you get you get in trouble. But how can how can we lighten the mood a little bit and bring how can we bridge the gap, and how do you use humor to just to connect with people? Share us a little bit of how you do that, that maybe we can learn as leaders and of businesses and teams and families and communities.
Gosh, that's a real tough one, Spencer. I mean, I know how to do it. And the way that I've done it, I believe, is through self deprecation and not taking myself too serious. I think that we need to laugh at ourselves. We need to laugh at each other's, differences. And I think that that's what's fun about it. I mean, I'm okay. So I'll tell one of the bits that I do on stage, and this always gets a laugh no matter where I am. And it obviously offends some people that are sensitive to it, but it's such a strong bit that it works. And so I am from Utah. People assume that I am a right. And I say I'm a skier. And so I'm leaning into the thought that I'm going to be now preaching from the stage and talking about being a quote unquote Mormon, right? But I'm saying, hey, everybody, so I'm from Utah, but you must be assuming that I'm a skier. And everybody laughs because I was going to go to Mormon, they thought. And then I say, I'm just kidding. I don't ski, but my wives do. And then they all scream laugh. And then I say, I'm just kidding. My wives don't have skis. Now, that's a very risky piece if you have a group of people that are very faithful to their practice of having many wives. And I'm okay to not worry about how they feel about that because I know many of those types of folks, and I think that they're wonderful people too. But the bit works so well in a connection type of way to laugh about what it is that I knew that they were thinking when I said I'm from Utah, the stereotype they thought I was going to lean into. The next thing they know that I'm making fun of what I knew they were thinking, and that I can lean into something that is absolutely misunderstood with throughout the entire world about my faith. Now, that's just one way that I can make humor work, is to make fun of what I know that you're thinking about me. And then at the same time, I was asked, as a member of my church is called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's what a Mormon's church name is. But I was asked by a group in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to come and speak at their synagogue, at their Jewish synagogue. Yes, these are absolutely faithful Jewish folks who do not obviously believe what I believe. They asked me to come and do a show for their pastors or their rabbis, their Jewish rabbis' retirement party after 50 years. And I made fun the whole night of the fact that how could there not be a Jewish performer that could come and perform better than a Utah Mormon for a rabbi's party? And they
You
scream
outrank
laugh the whole.
Seinfeld. You outrank Seinfeld. Come on.
I mean, they could have afforded
Woo.
anyone, had anybody, and I said, "This is the most bizarre thing." The rabbi and I worked for an hour prior on a Blues Brothers bit where we both put on hats, fedoras, sunglasses, and we did the Blues Brothers routine and did cartwheels. I mean, the guy was game for anything. It was completely for me the truth of, let's accept each other for the goodness of each other. Let's laugh about what our differences are. Let's not worry about the fact that I could stand up and be like, you all need to believe in Jesus. I mean, that would have been ridiculous, right? But I made fun of things that we had commonalities and differences, and they loved me all the more for it. I mean, we got multiple standing ovations that night, and this is how I bridged the gap throughout my entire career, is
I
by laughing about what makes us uniquely different, and that's the beauty of all of us coming together for that.
I absolutely love that, and I think one of the things that I think is so important is not taking ourselves so seriously. And I had Christian, you know how often I've talked about Kelvin. one of my great business mentors, Jason. And I'm writing about him in my book. Just an incredible leader and man of faith, are also part of our faith. But when people would find out that we were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they would often ask us about polygamy. And he just leaned right into it and said, how else do you think we got people to come from Norway to Utah in the 1850s? Come on over, have a couple of wives. Of course, we don't practice it, but just it put people, it just
Funny.
caused people to relax a little bit and not take
Yeah.
themselves so seriously.
Well done.
Yeah. So I think that's a great idea. There's another idea. Kevin's listening. He has more comments. I haven't had a chance to read that yet, but let me see if I can get to that. But one of the things that we have going on in Utah this week is a very divided, if you will, sporting event that's happening on Saturday. We have the 128 years ago, a rivalry was born, and it's one of the oldest in the entire United States, a football match between Brigham Young University and the University of Utah. Red and blue. We've been could you get any more perfect with this division? And my whole life as a kid growing up, I was a BYU fan. I went to BYU before I served a mission. When I came back, I had the opportunity to not be able to go there because of the situation with my mother's health. And so I went to the University of Utah, graduated with 2 degrees there, loved the University of Utah, still love BYU. But I think one of the things that we can talk about, Christian and Jason, is how the presidents of the university, the coaches of these teams, the alumni, the students are figuring out how to get rid of vitriolic behavior. I mean, anthropologists have said that sporting events are actually a substitute for warfare, and we should be able to be able to let off some steam and have some fun. One of the things that they are doing is they're showing appreciation for each other. These are two historically, I mean, one's a church school, one's a state school. The fans are usually rabid and negative, but they have worked really hard to change this relationship. And one of the things that they're doing is they're finding opportunities to work together to serve the community. And I think if you can find, I mean, maybe talk a little bit about how do we find common ground? How do we start to work to solve problems together instead of pointing our fingers?
Truth is, when it comes to what is our purpose?
Yeah.
What is the point of the game? Is it to entertain? Is it for, placement of a higher rank? Is it for the money they're going to get? I think it is to entertain the audience, and so I appreciate that whole concept.
I think tie it to the
I
promise. Each of those
yeah,
players have to be their best, is what I think it is to play your best and work your best. And that's part of the promise, isn't it?
absolutely, yeah, that's right. And yeah, when they think to themselves, this is what I'm here for. This is the reason that I have the opportunity. I'm going to give it my all and my best, and I love that. I think every leader has that as their true promise to themselves, is how can I give my best 100%, show up every day, those types of things. I grew up in a house where my dad decided to join the Crimson Club and the Cougar Club, which would be both BYU and Utah. And so as a child, I was always cheering for both sides. I just wanted them to represent our state well. And because to me, it's important for people to see that there's a lot of goodness coming from Utah. And so I received 2 full ride scholarships to BYU, but most of my first performances were at Utah. I'm very grateful for both universities, and I love the Holy War. It's a good thing. And I love that they're leaning into that. That's good.
Christian, I know you got something to say about this. You're a big sports fan.
Yeah, well, my wife and I are both Utah grads, and so we're supporters. We don't really have anything. We have no leg to stand on this year. We're really, really poor. But I think at the end of the day, when it's just like Jason said, if you get to know people and you listen to them, you start to see them as real human beings. These kinds of rivalries, they kind of take a back seat, right? And we start to focus on the things that we have in common more than the things that differentiate us. And I think that's coming to the fore here. And I like your idea, and the idea that was posited in the article of coming together to work for a worthy cause, right? because when you work together, you get to know people better, and you get to see them as they really are. And again, kind of injecting the religious aspect into it, and we're all children of the same glorious beings, you know. And so when we see ourselves as true brothers and sisters, and not as any number of categories or groups of people that we tend to put, in different buckets, then we have a newfound respect, appreciation, and love for each other.
Well, we're kind of, I'm enjoying this conversation. I'd like it to go on, but Jason, Christian, we're running up against the clock here. Any last questions that you have for our guest today?
Questions? I've got a million. We don't have the time. But what I'll simply do is express my appreciation to you, Jason, for being so open and vulnerable and sharing your story here. As someone who comes from the quote unquote other side, I find it just so heartbreaking what you've had to deal with, and nobody deserves to be treated in that manner. In my view, we all should look to love and support each other, and so I appreciate your vulnerability and your courage to come out here and share your own personal experience. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And there's
That
no
means a
loss
lot.
of respect or love or admiration on this side for
No,
you.
I appreciate it, Christian. And obviously, I don't know where you guys were coming from in the first place. I just can say I respect you both. I admire obviously your abilities and the greatness of the men that you are. You're both men of good faith of God, and I'm thankful for that. And it's sad when we have a lot to offer, and somebody will discount or discredit all of that because they think, well, you believe differently than me, so I can't receive it. In fact, I didn't receive one penny. This might not be known. I didn't receive one penny for one of those gigs that I just did in front of around probably 250,000 people over the last 2 months. I didn't receive payment. Now, why would I do that? Well, part of the trade-off was that my dad had sponsored that event in Salt Lake City for Cardio Miracle, the company that I'm helping him run. And I believe so much in this product. And I love my dad so much that I jumped off a cliff with him. I mean, I'm thankful for the things that he's taught me and mentored me through, and it has helped me to realize that not only am I allowing him to let me fall with him if that's where we're going, but I also feel that we can fly together. And so I feel sad for the people that said to themselves, "I can't take Cardio Miracle, or I don't want to buy it because you're supporting this." And they're typing it probably on a computer that was not made in this country. They're going to now buy it through another subscription or place, a different product that is run by criminals. And this is a product and a built, made for people that we want to have be healthy in a righteous and wonderful way. I just find that really fascinating. That if we can't put those things aside and say to ourselves, this will help my body, this will help my spirit, this will help my health, that I'm going to support it. So I just appreciate that we could have an open dialogue and communication here. And you guys have literally kept the promise to me in making this be a lot easier than I was not sure it would be. You guys, I don't talk about this stuff.
No, I'm so grateful that you did, and that's really an example of who you are. I always see you giving and being generous with your time, with your effort, and this show was no less indicative of that. I'm grateful that you took the time, and our focus today was how do we deal with the divisions and create more unity. And I mean, our topic, our whole focus is teamwork. How do we work together? And we can accomplish so much more together than we can alone or divided. And you are reaching out and you're helping so many people and lifting them up. And that's what we're trying to do on this show. And Kevin, I want to put one comment up. He said one more thing. He was talking about the founding fathers, about how vehemently they disagreed, yet they found a way to work together for the greater good of this country and, more importantly, the people of this country. And he just said thanks for this timely and valuable topic, and I echo his feelings, and thanks to you, Jason, for coming on the show. So
Thanks for having me, guys. My last thought is this. If there's anything you can take away from what I've said today, think about your promise. And I truly believe that as a team leader, as somebody who's making a difference in this world in business or otherwise, your leadership promise is to identify, clarify, and magnify the signature moves of the people you lead. When you can do that, you keep the promise.
That's a fitting conclusion. But I do want to say very quickly, Jason, if people do want to learn more about whether it's Cardio Miracle or the work that you're doing, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, my LinkedIn is great, but my website is jasonhewlett.com. But I'd also love to just tell you about Cardio Miracle. It's the best health product out there, and it will help you with if you're recovering from surgery, if you need better blood flow, if you have any kind of diabetic challenge, cardiovascular health, etc.
what about high
I
blood
believe
pressure?
it's high blood pressure, all of those things. It helps people with their numbers. It's a fascinating thing to watch people get off the medication that I think is hurting people worse, and it's a natural solution for a lot of people. If you give it a shot, it's a great thing. We have a 60-day money back guarantee. So, and it's made here in Utah. So it'd be awesome to have
Nice.
everybody check that out. Cardiomiracle.com.
And I remember, Jason, it wasn't too long ago where you had a significant injury that required surgery. And so you're coming at it from personal firsthand experience. Spencer, you've spent decades helping organizations around the world build better, higher performing teams. If people want to reach out and connect with you, how do they do it?
LinkedIn's the great way to do it. Thank you, Christian, for that opportunity. And likewise, how do they reach you? Oh, look, Kevin's buying it now, Jason.
There you
Yeah.
go. Okay, well, three cheers for LinkedIn because he joined us on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Jason, Spencer, thank you for an hour of really impactful and I think important conversation. Really appreciate it. And viewers, listeners, thank you for joining us as well. Please like and subscribe to our podcast. We'll catch you again soon.